You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, back to another episode of the SDSU podcast. I'm your host, Andre Hagberdian, and joined, as always, by Paul Garrison. What's going on, Paul?
Not a whole bunch, man. How are you doing? Excited to actually talk about actual football, man. There was a game. Did you know? Last week, there was an actual football game. San Diego State, if you haven't heard, they're 1-0. They beat a very, very good Ohio Bobcat team.
Yeah, finally we have an actual game to talk about as opposed to practice, scrimmage, transfer portal, depth charts, things like that. Before we get to that, though, we do want to announce a new sponsorship for the podcast, Marz Energy Cream. You follow a lot of Aztec players on social media. You'll notice that a lot of them have NIL deals with Marz Energy Cream. If you listen to the Father's Day episode with Cade Bennett, he mentioned Marz as one of his NIL deals that he has. Marz reached out to us right after that Father's Day episode, wanted to link up and do a partnership for the podcast. So we're excited to finally, have an agreement with them and for them to sponsor this podcast. I know we've had some samples. Paul and I have had about 2 months to try it ourselves. What do you think, Paul, about Marz Energy Cream?
Everyone who's listening, they know that I have a couple jobs and 4 children. So I've yet to sleep in this last decade. So I've actually really been enjoying the energy cream and being able to apply. You put like right on your neck. Honestly, right before I came on the podcast, put on a little bit. What I like about it is I'm kind of one of those people, like when it comes to energy drinks and things like that, where I get nervous and I get a little shaky. I haven't experienced any of that with Marz Energy Cream. So I've actually really, really enjoyed the product. I was glad that the timing worked the way that it did, because it's always one of those things like, okay, here's this product. Do you actually like the product? Do you actually use the product? And, the little time that went by since Cade's interview gave me a chance to use it. And I haven't had any of those, like I said, those shakes. I haven't had any of the just feeling a little bit just weird because you've had too much caffeine. It's worked to just kind of provide that great level of energy right when I need it.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a sponsor on the podcast previously, through, about a year and a half of our existence. And obviously when they reached out to us, we were interested, but we wanted to try the product. So I think after we tried the product and we both liked what the products did, it's kind of a replacement for, coffee or a 5-hour energy drink or things like that. So if you guys haven't tried it, marzenergycream.com, definitely give it a try. I don't think you guys will be disappointed. All right, so let's get to this Ohio game.
2013. Here's what we like to do. We're trying something new this year, which the Mr. Garrison's SDSU Aztecs grades. We're taking them away from an article and we're putting them onto the podcast. So we're going to give our grades this way, and we can jump around. We can go offense, defense. Figure might as well start with Jalen Maiden and the offense. I think that Jalen Maiden, for his complete game, my grade for him is a B. I thought that Ohio played the game that it wanted to play, that they were able to control the clock. You look at like the number of drives that San Diego State had, and they had 9 in the entire game, 10 if you include the kneel down at the very, very end. But it was impressive after, the opening drive where San Diego State got 3 points. They kind of hit that part where I think in the press conference today, Jalen Maiden chalked it up to nerves from the touchdown before the touchdown right at the end of the first half. They went, touchdown, they punted, but then field goal, touchdown, turnover and downs. And I thought that if you go and you say that San Diego State is going to score on, basically half of their possessions, or have opportunity to score on half of their possession, I think that's a really good number. And of course, with Maiden, anytime he doesn't turn over the football, I think that's a really good day for him.
Yeah, I was gonna give him a B plus, particularly because he did not turn the ball over. After struggling, I think he was 4 of 10 in the beginning and then finished 13 of 17 for the majority of his 164 yards, no turnovers, had, command. They didn't have any pre-snap penalties. And I know most of the time that goes to the offensive line, but sometimes it could be on the quarterback as well. And he didn't have any issues like that. They didn't have to take any timeouts because they couldn't get a call in, and Maiden had some issues with that last year. So overall, I think he did a really nice job, and I'd give him a B plus.
All right, so then jumping to the running backs. What did you like from the running backs, and what grade? You can start off with this one. What grade would you give the running backs?
I had them as a B plus as well. Up until Jalen Armstead's 48-yard run, I think the grade would have been a little lower, but Armstead had such a great drive, a fourth down pickup. Keenan Christon only had 2 catches for 10 yards, but both of those were third down and short conversions to keep drives alive, and they scored points on both of those drives. Keenan had a great first drive. That one run where Dean Abdul pulled to his left, he got inside him and then had to make a defender miss in space. So I thought he did some nice things when given the opportunity. He kind of got lost a little bit after that first drive in terms of the carries, although he played a lot of snaps. Cam Davis, Martin Blake didn't really get much going, but they really didn't get that many opportunities either. But I'd give him a B plus because, especially with Armstead's performance, I think that really gave San Diego State command of the game towards that end of that third quarter, and they were able to hold on, obviously.
No, I would give him a little bit better. I thought it was an A- game. I do agree with you that, obviously a big chunk of it comes on that long run. But it was still only 48 yards. I mean, I know he didn't get an 80-yard run, but that's often how, running backs gain yards. I think if you take away Jalen Maiden's 10 carries for 36 yards, the running backs themselves average about 6 yards a carry. I'm just not sure what else you would want aside from that. They obviously did not score a touchdown. I would be tempted to go into the B range because they did fumble the football. And,
Right.
that's where the turnover came from. But I thought they were really, really good. Again, Ohio limited their numbers. They had, I think, something like 54 possession or plays to 80 something that Ohio had. So just in the opportunities that they had, I thought they were really good. As you say, they caught the ball out of the backfield, converted first downs. I thought that Keenan Christian was somebody that Ohio really paid attention to and was really aware when he was on the field. I thought he was the best skill position player for the Aztecs. Even with as great of a game as Mark Redmond had, I thought he was the most explosive, maybe I should say. The one who just seemed to be able to make a lot when it wasn't there and do things that you were just like, whoa, okay, really, especially on that first drive you're talking about, and a few others throughout the game. I kind of did wonder why, I thought his touches got limited after that, but maybe that's just how the game goes. It was great to see Jalen Armstead be able to bounce back from the turnover. We asked Coach about that, and he's reserved as he is. He just basically said, "I was glad he was able to compose himself and get the job done." I think Jalen Armstead, just the strong running that he has. I think everyone kind of wondered if, do you if you shed weight, do you gain explosiveness, but you lose some of that physicality? And he looked every bit as explosive. So I give him an A- just because they showed signs that they could be better than average, and they've been average. I think ever since Greg Bell left.
EFF had San Diego State with 61 offensive plays and Ohio with 87. So now give or
Those things,
take,
those things
maybe.
always change. It's a couple of days. I think it was in the 50s when I was looking at it the day after.
Wide receivers, I'm going to go with a C, but it's really more of an incomplete because they really just didn't get that many opportunities, not many targets. Mekhi Shaw had one of the best plays of the night. That sideline toe tap grab. That was the first play after the Barfield interception that got them to midfield. And then the roughing the passer got them to the 34. So that was a great play on Mekhi's part. But, the rest of the receivers really were quiet. Balin Brooks as a true freshman starting and making 2 catches is nice. Josh Nicholson only played a couple snaps, coming back from injury. Philippe Wesley out. Breon Penny had 1 catch, I think, for 9 yards. So their C is really more of a product of them just not being part of the offense, not really having a lot of opportunities and a lot of targets to really, either make a play or miss a play.
No, I agree. I think it's very fair. I'm going to have to give him a B only because Devon Celestine's dance moves, as Balin Brooks made 1 and then 2 guys miss that went and spread everywhere on social media. So just the dance move alone gets him up to the B range. But I do think that this is going to be, one of those questions about SDSU's offense. And again, it's about efficiency. And I know I've been harking on this, but as I've watched the game now multiple times since. I've come to the conclusion that their offense outplayed their defense. Just with the limited opportunities that they had, after again that lull in the first half, I thought they were very efficient with it. They completed first downs. They finally kind of took the time of possession back. Made up some of that, especially in the second part of the game. And so I thought the receivers did what they were asked to do. And, aside from that explosive play from Shaw, definitely would like to have seen something that was explosive. But, I thought Balin Brooks had his guy beat. If Jalen Maiden in the I think it was the second drive of the game, it was the first drive of the game. If he leads him instead of throwing behind him and gives him a chance on it. So I thought that the receivers were open, which is what you want. Thought that they, did well in the running game. I think overall they were pretty good. I think the C is the right answer, but again, Devon Celestine, great dance moves. So he's going to get him up to a B.
How many viral moments came from that game from San Diego State?
No kidding.
Jalen Maiden hitting the referee on the nose, the Celestine dance, the Keenan Christian pass protection block.
Yep.
On the blitzing safety, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then even Celestine's second half kickoff tackle. So, yeah, there's a lot. Now, there weren't that many games on Saturday. But, yeah, those moments would have probably gone by regardless of there was a full slate of games.
Absolutely.
Tight end. I mean, I think this is an easy one. I have an A. Right? Mark Redmond, 5 catches, 62 yards, two touchdowns. Jay Rudolph had 1 catch. Although, if he doesn't trip, he had 2 catches. Although that one, if he doesn't trip and fall.
That's 6.
It was at least a first down and possibly a touchdown.
Yeah.
And I think then they're an A+. But they converted the 4th down. Jalen Armstead converted the 4th down. So, but although they kicked the field goal on that drive eventually. So, but I mean, we've heard the coaches talk about tight end. We want to be more like Utah. And at least for week 0 or first game of the season, the tight ends were a bigger part of the passing game than the wide receivers.
Couldn't agree with you more. Everything you said was spot on. I couldn't give them that highest grade because Rudolph fell, but I thought it was, again, if the running game is going well, that's because the tight ends are being physical. They obviously were on the passing game. I thought Mark Redmond's 2 touchdowns weren't his best play. The one where he is able to start at the opposite line and go all the way across the field, and Maiden laid it there perfectly. I thought that really showed what makes him special. That ability as a tight end to be able to run away from players. So I thought they were really, really good. I thought that not only catching the ball, but I thought that they provided, that creativity. They provided that ability to be multiple. So I thought it was a really, really good job by the tight ends, and I think that it it lends itself to expecting more of that in the future, even if they aren't such huge red zone threats. But a tight end who can elevate and go and make a catch is such a weapon in the red zone, and it's good to see that Maiden has figured that out with Redmond, because they get a person like Daniel Bellinger, and it just never seemed like the quarterbacks could get that part of the game with it, and he was such a physical presence that you knew he had that ability. And so that Redmond's being able to do that, and he understands how to get him that ball in that space, I think is very encouraging.
I was surprised they only played 3 tight ends. Cameron Harpole got some snaps, but no Logan Tanner, no Des Melton. Curious to see if Logan Tanner gets more involved as the season goes on. But yeah, I mean, Mark Redmond played all but one snaps. He played 60 snaps in the game. Jay Rudolph played on like about half. So, and then they had that one play where they had both tight ends in the backfield blocking for Jalen Armstead. So, I mean, they were doing things with the tight ends that they really haven't been doing before.
No, absolutely. And I actually there was a first down that Mark Redmond got out of that same formation, and he ran
Yeah.
like a kind of an out, kind of a wheel and out or whatever you would call that, a swing and then an out, and right in the Ohio sideline, got that nice push off, and they were just crying like crazy about that, and it was just a very skillful play that a tight end should be able to do.
Offensive line. This is a difficult one because
Yeah,
obviously offensive linemen don't get stats, right? The only stats they really get are penalties, and they had two penalties. One of them I think was highly suspect on Dean Abdullah. The other one on Ross. I don't think we saw a good replay on that one. But they opened up holes for the running backs. Jalen Maiden was not sacked at all.
right.
I'm giving them a solid B.
I've always done these things kind of on a curve. And so like I was tempted to actually give the tight ends a little bit lower of a grade, only because like you're expecting, that elite
Yeah.
level. But I have them at an A. I mean if you have Jalen Maiden, with the exception of throwing the ball at the ref, I'm not under duress too much. The play action wasn't really there for them. They sold out on they sold out on Maiden on the play action, which I think is the reason why some of those inside runs were so effective, because they were so worried about Maiden's ability in the play action. So aside from those, man, they were there. I thought they got to the next level. On the television broadcast of it, they point out on that Redmond play where he gets across the field, Christian Jones starts with a double team on the defensive lineman, and then there's a late blitzing linebacker or a DB, a smaller guy. I mean, everyone's small compared to Christian Jones. And Jones is able to peel off of the double team and have the athleticism to push the defender past Maiden, who steps up into the pocket and then delivers that perfect throw as he's getting hit. And just the ability for such a young guy to be able to make that play and to have the athleticism and the wherewithal to do it, I thought was really, really good. I did think it was interesting, that there was all of those oars on the offensive line, and it was basically who started
Fan
the
fest.
Fan Fest scrimmage. Thank you, and is the one who started there. So again, I from an offensive line that very rarely did what it was supposed to do. When we talked about this, I thought that San Diego State's advantage was up front and that they should have been able to manhandle Ohio. And I thought they did that. I thought despite the fact that Ohio had the ball for so much longer, I thought there were signs that SDSU's line was imposing their will on them. And I think again, it's 1 week. It's against an opponent who's very good. I don't want to take anything away from them, but they're not the athletes that they're going to see against UCLA and Oregon State and Boise State. Probably I'm not going to see that. Obviously, Idaho State is not going to have what Ohio had for a first game. No false starts. And as you say, that the penalties, we're pretty suspect. And I think that all in all, I mean, if you're wanting to see Mike Goff and you're wanting to see growth in the offensive line, like I think you see it. And I think, I think it was a very, very welcome sight. The offense, again, scoring on basically 50% of its possessions or having the opportunity to, I think speaks volume about what their line was able to do.
Yeah, and Brady Hoke during his press conference on Tuesday applauded Christian Jones for playing well and finishing his blocks for his first start. So, yeah, he definitely brought him up by name when he was asked about the offensive line. All right, moving to the defense. Defensive line.
Okay.
I'm going to say the defensive line, I think, was the weakest positional group of the team.
Let's go. Let's disagree. I like this. This is now. It's been two nights, Andre. It's been two nights. Let's get into some disagreements, because I got a different perspective on this.
I think Tupu Alualu had half a sack. He combined with Cooper McDonald on a half a sack. Otherwise, there were not many tackles from the defensive linemen. A lot of the pressure that came on the quarterback was from blitzing linebackers or McDonald rushing off the edge. We didn't see too much of Garrett Fountain. Brady had spoke about how he was very upset with the defense, how the tackling. There was one play, I think a bunch of defensive linemen got in the backfield and had the running back for like
Dalton. Yeah.
had it for a loss, and he got out of there and got like 5 yards. I don't necessarily think the defensive line was awful, but if I'm comparing them to the other positional groups, especially on defense, I'm going to give them a C minus.
Okay, I'm going to go with a B minus, and I'm gonna justify it this way. Did you see anyone block a linebacker all night?
No,
I thought
not many, other than Cooper McDonald.
Yeah, except for Cooper McDonald, who was basically a defensive end. I thought that the linebackers were clean all night, which in San Diego State's defense, especially when you had, Jonah Tavai, Cameron Thomas, that might not be the most important thing that you're thinking of because those guys could beat two and still make the play. But I just don't see how, like, Ohio's offensive line, which is veteran, which is big. And again, we talked about them not necessarily being the most athletic. We talked about that coming in. So maybe that contributed to it, but they didn't get to the second level. They weren't able to get to a lot of that because I thought the defensive line did what it was supposed to do. I agree that their stats, weren't there. I thought that they played a very, very important role. And again, you're grading on a curve, right? This is the part of the defense that is not expected to be stout, but they were. And I want to really highlight one thing that did jump out to me a whole bunch. So San Diego State's getting killed in time of possession. I highlighted this in the article that I wrote about it, and Brady Hoke decides to go for two. I'm sorry, decides to go for it on the second fourth down. And in the second fourth down, he decides to go for it. He gets it, and they're able to take the rest of that quarter and get a few more minutes with the.
It was the first fourth down.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. It was the first fourth down. It was the second call because the first one was at the end of the first half. You're right. I'm sorry. The first fourth down that he decided to go for it on, and they make it, and they end up getting 3 on the drive, so it didn't change what they would have gotten for it. But what it did is it allowed the defense to stay off the field. So after they go from the third to the fourth quarter, Ohio gets the ball back after the field goal. They play, their defensive line is Wyatt Drager, Sammy, number 94, help me with his last name, and
Tulu Halamaka.
Yeah, Tulu Halamaka, and they played Brady Nasser. So this is their third string offensive line. They pick up an out route or towards the sideline for 9 yards on first down. Ohio does. 2nd and 1, they run right at Brady Nasser, and they run right next to Sammy, and they completely eat up the offensive line, and 2 linebackers meet them a little bit for a loss. I'm sorry, not 2 linebackers. It was Cody Moon and Marcus Ratcliffe, and they stop them on 2nd and 1. And then on 3rd and 1, they don't even try to run again. Noah Tumblin knocks it down, one of his pass breakups, and they punt. They hold him to a 3 and out, but it was the 3rd string defensive line that was able to get that job done. Obviously, Wyatt Drager had been in the second and first units and all this stuff, but 2 of their next tier guys. And for the defensive line in that moment to step up that way and not allow them to have a drive, I thought earned them at least the B minus, that they could have that much depth and in that critical moment hold them to that 3 and out. And I thought that was a pretty important play because, Hope talked about after the game that the reason he went for it the next time was because he didn't think his defense was going to stop them. And if you have that disparity in the number of plays, he's saying they're gassed. And after that huge long drive that they had to get it to within 1 touchdown, the 100-yard reception and all that stuff, looking back, the biggest rest that they got were because of Hoke's gamble to go for it, and because the 3rd string defensive line was able to come in and to give that opening group a much deserved and needed break.
How about walk-on Keon Mitchell being the backup defensive end ahead of, Ryan Anderson ran with the ones when Garrett Fountain was out. You thought he would be that backup guy. But
Yeah.
not only was he not the backup, he was even behind Brady Nasser on the third team you just talked about. But walk on Keon Mitchell, and we saw him in fall camp and practice continually make plays in one-on-one drills and in scrimmages. Meteoric rise for a
Yeah.
walk-on defensive lineman.
I remember at the first practice that we were at, you kept hearing his name, and I was like, I'm not going to ask Coach Hoke about a walk-on who's doing this against third teams. And then one of the next practices, like he just kept hearing. It's like, all right, I'm gonna say this guy's name. Just let's see. And he said, we're gonna depend on him. And I was like, whoa, oh, okay, like he's already shown that much. And to your point, I think that's a really really good point. So let's go to linebackers.
It's hard to not give them an A-.
Why the minus? What did you need him to do more?
I think Cody Moon's personal foul penalty negating
3 inches, man. Oh man. You think that was a penalty?
it was.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Have you seen worse not called?
Yes, I have. But
I've seen less called.
yeah, and regardless of which should have been or not, it was called.
Yep.
And it took away the pick six.
Okay, I can give him a minus for that.
I think they had some of the missed tackles that Brady talked about was at the linebacker level as well. But obviously, one interception, two of the linebackers teamed up. Cody Moon got the hit and Trey White got the pick. New Zealand Williams, who only played on the last drive of the game, seals victory with an interception. Yeah. Cooper McDonald had a half a sack. Gets 6 quarterback hurries, which is hits, sacks, and pressures. Pretty much the only guy getting a pressure on the quarterback without blitzing, basically.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because I we're using the stats that I was using the stats that was provided by SDSU, the little paper, we had a paper copy as we exit, and they're amazing. And they weren't listed for him, but like right. I had in my notes, like Cooper McDonald was really good. And then I went to look at the stuff and I was like, what was I getting? What was I looking at? And so I'm glad that somebody else saw and counted that he had 6, because that's how I felt. I felt like, and I know the interpretation's different, and that's the reason why PFF and the way that San Diego State does it is different. But I thought the same thing about Cooper McDonald. I thought he played really, really well. But yeah, I mean, they just filled the stats. And again, we talked about this in the preview. We said, look, they could not block an athletic linebacker from Penn State. Remember that?
Yeah.
And so we had highlighted and we said, if there's a place where this defense should be able to wreak havoc, it should be from attacking linebackers. Listen, we're going to be wrong. Probably like the next 10 things that we say to watch out for, especially when we go to Idaho State and we have no idea who's even going to be on the field. It proved true to that. They had a hard time with the speed and athleticism of San Diego State's linebackers. And I mean, they absolutely, from Cody Moon being the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Week, all the way down the depth chart to New Zealand Williams sealing the game with the interception. I thought the linebackers were not just okay. I thought that they were like a difference making group. And then I had them at an A. They probably should be. The reason I would say that they didn't have more is they didn't have more tackles outside of what Cody Moon did. But that's being super, super nitpicky in my opinion.
Yeah, the first sack of the season was Zyrus Fiaseu and Vaikaho both blitzing, confused the offensive linemen, and both pretty much ended up at the quarterback. Zyrus got there first, so he got the sack. But I mean, they were both basically took him down, and that was Curtis O'Rourke's last play of the game. And reportedly, it was a concussion that kept him out of the game, or a head injury, not any kind of leg injury. But
if he got the only one I'd have to look at, because I didn't see anything that could cause a concussion. Football's weird anyway, but the one that I would want to go back to is Marcus Ratcliffe, and see if he got anything there, because Marcus Ratcliffe absolutely blew him up on that option. Well, we can talk about that. I thought it was a crazy decision that guy was out there. I compared him to a boxer who couldn't defend himself. He saw the blitzing linebacker. He didn't just fall on the ground, all like Peyton Manning would do. He put his head between his legs as if he was gonna like duck from underneath him and get around him or some weird stuff. The same thing with Marcus Ratcliffe. He was out there and they went on the option, and I think he was surprised that there was nobody there, and he just had no idea what to do. He was just so out of, I guess, used to playing football and being in that physical way. I just thought that they did him a disservice to play him at all, truthfully. And they know their team way better than I do. And so I don't really know what I'm talking about, and I'll be honest about that. But just he didn't look like he could defend himself. And that I think is always like with quarterbacks, I always think that's the scariest thing is when they don't seem like, you remember Jim Everett? He got like that at the end of his career where there was all these phantom people that he was he was ducking away from. And he just, again, he didn't look like he could defend himself. And so I thought kudos to their coaching staff. They said after that he was mad at them because they didn't put him back in. But I was glad that they protected him because his knee buckled as he tried to jog off the field. It looked like the opposite knee from the one he got hurt. Thank God for that. But he just didn't look like he was competitive in the ways that he needed to. Like he looked like he would be great in 7-on-7. But once San Diego State kept that guy was going to really hurt himself because he couldn't manage that aspect of the game. And so I thought I thought their coaching staff did him a favor by taking him out, but I don't think he should have been in there to begin with.
All right, moving on to you want to do the corners and the safeties separately?
Let's do it. I got the same grade for them, though. I'm going with the big C. I thought that, a little bit more of a skillful QB, a little bit more of a skillful wide receiver, and the cornerbacks would have gotten beat for a touchdown. I thought, there was a 3rd and 19 where they threw a little short route and the first drive of the second half, and Des Malone couldn't make the tackle. That's unforgivable. You can't let a guy go 3rd and 19. Again, they got beat a few times that, if you're an Ohio fan and I thought they were outmatched, but I thought they were outmatched like athletically, but I thought they actually played better football overall than the Aztecs. I thought that they played their scheme better. They did what they wanted to do. They just couldn't match up athletically with the Aztecs. If they're looking at that upset or whatever that word is, I think being able to get some of those throws over the top, I think would have made a huge difference. And I thought they were there, and I thought that the cornerback opposite Des Malone, with the exception of that one play that we already talked about, I didn't think Dallas Branch or Chris Johnson were fantastic. I thought Noah Tumblin really came in and did something good with it.
I do remember the 3rd and 19 play. And Des Malone, I think the pass was caught maybe 5 or 6 yards short of the first down marker, and he kind of took a really aggressive angle out of bounds, which didn't make a lot of sense. He also had a deep defensive pass interference, although I think that was a bad call because on replay, it didn't look like he touched the guy, and he went for the interception. I think Noah Tumblin's play is probably why I would give them a B, because he made a lot of nice one-on-one plays, 3 pass breakups, 5 tackles. You're right. I think Chris Johnson and Dallas Branch did not play well, and I think that was partly what Brady Hoke was upset about. He also mentioned some guys got dinged up, which is probably why Noah Tumblin played a lot more in the second half. So yeah, I would say a B.
Again, I have them at a C. But again, I thought that Noah Tumblin really came into the game and really solidified the secondary because, again, he had his pass breakups. They were really important. And I think, Brady talked about this at the press conference. I thought he showed the kind of aggressiveness and just being close to guys and challenging them that I didn't think you really saw from the other guys. Safety, I also had a C. I think Marcus Ratcliffe had a really, really good game. I thought that Cedarius Barfield was an absolute playmaker when they needed to make plays. I thought that his 2 best plays were obviously the interception right before the first half ended and stopped that drive. And how could the game have been different if it was 13-3 versus going in there at 10-6? And then there was a reverse that
Mm.
stopped a drive, the first drive of the third quarter, where it looked good. It looked ready to go, and it looked like the only person who kind of sniffed it out was Barfield, and he just made him stretch it out a little bit. And then the 11 hats to the ball. I think if there's a tape that Kurt Maddox is going to show recruits about what it means to be an Aztec, I think it's that play. I think it was 10 hats to the ball. I think one guy didn't get over there, but there was just so many that met there. But aside from those two plays, I thought that they absolutely just worked the slot areas. I thought that was where they were the most dangerous. The transfer from Ohio State, he had over 100 yards, but they were mostly from the slot. I thought, again, they had a hard time. There was a couple times where they got beat. They didn't pay for it, which matters. But I thought that, they kind of left some of those plays out there. The opening of the second half, they started with JD Coffey at Aztec, and they also had Josh Hunter as the starter. They gave up a lot of big third downs. They had Coffey blitzing off the edge, and he just completely gave himself away that he was doing that, and got blocked predictably. So I thought that there was I thought that they could be a lot better. So I gave them that C, even though I think you could make a really, really good argument that Barfield's interception was the play of the game.
Yeah, I would give them a B minus. I agree that Barfield had those two plays. He also, on the first drive of the game, Ohio had a 3rd and goal from the 2.
And that's right. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that play. 100%.
They threw a slant to Wigless, and Barfield got his hand in there and knocked it away. That's 4 points right there because of Barfield's play.
100%.
The one thing I know I'm breaking a rule here, but like on Barfield's interception, he really was at the right place at the right time. And I think he credited Coach Maddox with the play call. But going back and looking at that play, Daniel Opoku dropped back into coverage and picked up the running back that came out of the backfield, who that pass was supposedly intended for. You could see the tight end came in to block.
Yeah.
And he was confused that there was a defensive lineman there. He ended up basically causing confusion. The running back stopped, and Barfield was right there. So going to like my defensive lineman, that play probably should have given the defensive line grade a little bit of a boost because of that.
You can change your mind. You can change your mind.
So C plus.
C plus, and Opoku should have had another. He had an actual opportunity for a pick on a little. I mean, because that's what they were doing. Right. They were just they did a zone blitz, and they were because that's what they did all day is they just threw to the slot. As far as a story, man, Marcus Ratcliffe returning 103 yards for a touchdown. I don't know how that works, but I think Cody Moon owes him something I don't know, gets him like an extra soda or something that college students exchange.
Yeah. Did you listen to Cody Moon's interview on John and Jim on Monday?
I heard some of it, but I did not hear the whole thing.
So they asked him about what did you tell Marcus Ratcliffe after that? Like, do you just say sorry? I ruined your true freshman debut.
What did he say?
So he goes, yeah, when I went to practice today, I said, Marcus Ratcliffe, pick 6. Just kidding. I thought I was cracking up listening to that.
That's good.
I think Cody Moon, we had him on the podcast back in, I don't know, January, February when he first signed and committed. And it was great talking to him, but like we've definitely seen more of a funnier, lighter side to Cody Moon in different interviews he's done, either on the field after practice or on the radio, or after the scrimmage. So like, yeah, I think he's in addition to him playing really well and becoming he's a fan favorite. I think people are going to want to hear from him all the time.
No question. So then going to the kicking game.
I would give him a B plus because he missed the kick.
You are so nice. That is a gimme. It was inside the 40.
It was a 39?
Yes, inside the 40.
Yeah, but he made a 49-yarder.
He did. Done the grades for years. So now I'm a harsh grader, bro.
Yeah, but you're a real life teacher
That's true.
that's used to having to grade students harsh.
That's true.
I'm just a contracts guy. I don't grade people for a living.
That's true. I thought that he's better than that, and he was automatic last year inside of 40. He's got to be automatic again. And then I thought that he had that kickoff out of bounds. If we're combining those parts of it, so I gave him a C. But again, it would have been a D. But he had that. I thought that opening kick to salvage that drive and to get 3 points, considering they didn't get another points until 44 seconds, and I think it loomed large. And they didn't get any points off of Trey White's interception because he missed that kick. The one that he was able to get, I thought was really, really important. And then I thought that it seemed to me, since only because we've seen Jack Browning, I don't know this from a coach, but we've seen Jack Browning put it through the end zone a whole bunch of times, that I thought that they kicked it to make, as Brady said after the game, when I asked him about the Von Celestine's hit, there's always can be a statement. Something can happen that's really a big statement for you on a kickoff. And so it seemed like they were intentionally trying to put a little bit of air under it. And I thought, except for the one time that he kicked out of bounds, I thought he did a good job there.
Plus 3 punts all over 50 yards, including a 60-yarder.
Well, how about the last one then? Returns.
Mekhi Shaw didn't. I don't think Mekhi Shaw I think he fair caught all of his punts. I don't think he had a return, right?
Right, but he caught them all.
But he caught them all. Yeah. Yep. And kickoff returns, I think Keenan Kristen had one and Martin Blake had one.
I think I had Martin Blake with both of them, but it wasn't. I thought that I thought that Max Garrison was missed. I thought there was an explosiveness that Martin Blake didn't show. Maybe he'll show it next time. But I thought they could have gotten a little bit more from that. They let one go in between them, but they didn't turn the ball over. I thought that they did their job there.
Episode of the SDSU podcast is sponsored by Marz Energy Cream, the first ever topical energy delivery product. Think energy drink, but it's a lotion. It contains a proprietary blend of natural ingredients, including caffeine, taurine, and B vitamins, to provide an energizing boost. And unlike traditional energy drinks and gels, Marz Energy Cream is sugar-free, contains no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. If you want to try it out, go to marzenergydrinkcream.com and use the code Andre, spelled ANDRE, at checkout to receive 15% off a purchase of a 50 milliliter tube. Yeah, so that's the Ohio recap. Aztecs obviously 1-0. Now they're looking ahead to Idaho State to go 2-0, another home game. They beat Idaho State 38-7 last year, but Idaho State had a whole new coaching staff, a lot of 70 out of 110 new players.
Wild.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Brady Hoke said today that this is as difficult as a preparation for an opponent he can remember in his coaching career because of how little information there is out there on not just the coaching system, but like the players too.
Right.
Like Hunter Hayes, the Idaho State has a quarterback competition with 3 guys. Hunter Hayes, who played in the game last year, he came in once Tyler Vanderwall got injured. So there's tape on him, clearly. But then there is a West Virginia transfer, Matt Cavallero, who played 1 year of JUCO in 2019 before transferring to West Virginia and hasn't gotten a snap at West Virginia in 3 years. So there's no tape there. And then there's a transfer from Diablo Valley in Northern California, Jordan Cook, who played 1 year of JUCO. I don't know how much tape there is from Diablo Valley Community College. So it's really hard. I mean, I think Brady Hoke said it's more of a system thing than like who the quarterbacks are. So they're going back and watching UC Davis tape. They're going back and watching tape from where Coach Hawkins, played and coached at, over the years. So there's a lot of digging in the archives probably happening at San Diego State this week, or probably over the weekend and into this week, just to figure out what these guys are going to do offensively and even defensively with a new coach, although they run a 3-3-5. So there is some familiarity there.
At the very least, I think it offers the opportunity for the team to really practice the idea that you treat every opponent the same. I think it also works into the idea of you might not be able to scout Idaho State really well, but you can self scout and kind of just focus on yourself and get really good with those fundamentals.
Yeah.
I would expect a relatively vanilla game plan, not only because I think they want to give less good tape for UCLA, but also because you don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I thought your insight in the preview that you wrote that like they seemingly have eliminated the tight end position or they have a typo in their roster. It's just like, what is that? Because I did watch some UC Davis in preparation for this conversation, and you know they look honestly a lot like San Diego State. They had tight ends, they had wide receivers, they would have three wide and a back, and they're you could definitely tell teams respected their passing game. But they also averaged for it's FCS, but they averaged like 190 yards rushing. And they were super balanced, in terms of just their final numbers and stats. But they also weren't very good. They were 6-5. So the guy is kind of that offensive savant. I think and in many ways it's very similar for Idaho State as San Diego State. I think their baseball coach, where they got to hire their head coach. They got one big hire in terms of their budget, and it doesn't make sense to use it on somebody who's going to be a kind of an overseer of everything, a GM kind of guy. They need somebody who can be elite at one of the coordinator positions. And so that's what they're hoping that this guy would be. He is absolutely an up and coming kind of offensive guru kind of person with deep Idaho roots. And so, I think it's the kind of it's the kind of hire that you make when you're I think kind of a lottery ticket for them. But as it pertains to this game, everything that you said is right. But I think that it also offers an opportunity to really fine tune some of that focus, really fine tune some of that. We're the same every day, and every day we get to improve. And I think there is a lot to improve on. I mean, it seems like every single time Coach Hoke speaks about the defensive performance against Ohio, the description of the first half gets worse and worse.
Yeah, he said it was crap, right? Today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was too the question about them overlooking Idaho State because they're so overmatched. And he wanted to make it sound like we can't overlook anybody with the way we played because we played like crap. And I think that's a signal to his players. And I'm sure it's not, he's been saying that in meetings too. It's not just saying it in press conferences, but I think, yeah, you're right. The definition of how the defense played has gotten worse every time he has spoken. And it got worse throughout the press conference on Tuesday.
That's interesting. And again, and it's funny because I think you and I, when we went to the press conference after the game, and you just saw the 3 turnovers, you saw what's supposed to be a high scoring offense. You saw it, held to, 13 points that they needed at the very, very end to be able to get. I think we went in there thinking, okay, the defense played really good. And from the jump, it was like, hey, why did you go for it? And I was like, well, because I didn't think our defense could stop them. And it was like, oh. And he's like, our defense couldn't tackle at all in the first half. And we were yelling at them at halftime. And then, like I said, it's just progressively gotten worse. So I think the opportunity to clean some of that stuff up, I think is really good. They did talk about, just the nicks that they got. And I think there is something about being in football shape and actually having that, and so getting everybody healthy, I think is there. I think they want to depend on some of their young players. I thought Eric Butler is a good example. I thought after Josh Hunter did not have a good one series that he was in, Eric Butler came in, and I thought that he was that physical presence and did some of those things. But I definitely think that they can, if it goes to script, get some good opportunities for some of the younger players. I think it would be amazing if they, and you're going off a 38-7 last year for this, but I think it would be great if Kyle Crum could get some snaps and they could
Mm.
figure out how to get some of those guys some time and see if they have or what they have in those guys. Same thing, with another opportunity for the offensive line to gel and things of that nature. But I would expect them to run the football. I would expect them to try to get that advantage there. I will say though that I think Idaho State may have had the most. There was a lot of them. Gosh, this is hard to say. There were so many times last year where it was just like, oh God, the worst thing that could possibly happen happened. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, so that was the fourth false start in a row, or whatever. But when they gave up that opening touchdown to Idaho State after laying that egg against Arizona, it
Yeah.
took the air out of Snapdragon. Obviously, Braxton Burmeister and his legs were able to get something going there, or whatever. But interesting game. Talk me through, some of the matchups. You gave us some good matchups, I thought, in your preview about that they have a pretty, I don't know what you call them, a tight end, but
Yeah.
they have a slot guy who definitely could test who could test some of those Warrior safeties.
Yeah, Cyrus Wallace, he transferred to Idaho State before last season from Santa Barbara College as a tight end. He caught 6 passes for 44 yards in the game last year. It was about 8 yards per catch, so nothing big, right? But now with he on the roster, he's listed as a wide receiver. Nobody's listed as a tight end. But on the depth chart, he's still kind of listed as under a tight end. So I don't know if that's a typo or what, but he's 6'3", going up against, Sedarius Barfield, who's 5'11". So that height advantage could be, we remember San Diego State having a lot of trouble with big tight ends like Derek Deese Jr., Colt Turner, guys like that in the past. And so I think that's a matchup to watch to see what they could do with side. Xavier Guillory, who's the guy who scored that 75-yard touchdown last year on the second play of the game. He was obviously their best receiver, a ton of catches, a ton of yards. He's gone. He transferred to Arizona State to follow his head coach, Charlie Libragel, who's now the special teams coach at Arizona State. So Idaho State was 1-10 last year under Charlie Libragel in his first year. He resigned and took a special teams coordinator job at Arizona State before they could fire him. If they were even going to fire him, I don't know. But he was like, I'll take a special teams job at a Power 5 program over the head coach of an FCS program. But he took Xavier Guillory with him. He took his field goal kicker, his field goal kicker and punter with him too. But that's a matchup to watch. There's also a San Diego connection on both sides of the ball. Raiden Hunter, the running back, who led them with about 450 rushing yards last year. He's from San Diego High. So he's back again for a second year to play in his hometown. So that's a guy that I think he had 53 rushing yards in the game last year. And then a newcomer, Herman Smith, who was a Lincoln High safety, originally committed to San Diego State, but then decommitted and went to Jackson State and played for Coach Prime for 2 years. And then when obviously Coach Prime went to Colorado, he transferred and ended up at Idaho State. So he's a starting safety, one of those 3 starting safeties in the 3-3-5. So he's coming back home and playing in front of probably family and friends from Lincoln as well. So that's a San Diego connection on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think Smith was somebody that when he originally committed, I think people were pretty excited about. Obviously with what Coach Prime did at Jackson State, I think everyone kind of thought. I think people were a little bit surprised that he went from Jackson State to Idaho State. But obviously you got to find the right spot for each individual does. And I think I'm looking at that. I do remember their head coach last year. He basically all he talked about after the game about San Diego State was about how horrible of a special teams coach he is. Because Jordan Bird had a touchdown. He's like, if there's anything I'm supposed to be good at, it's coaching special teams, and we got worked on the special teams, So I thought that was
And Jack Browning had a fake punt run for first down, right?
right. That's right. That was in that game. And so anyway, I'm not sure what to expect. I do know they have a quarterback who, my recollection of it was Danapoko destroyed their starting quarterback, and he was just, I don't know how somebody that big, they just forgot that he was playing. And so he came into that. And then I thought as the game progressed, I thought that quarterback grew more comfortable. So I would expect him to be able to, if I would expect him to be the starter because of that experience, and then let everyone play. But I would expect that just especially at the start of the game. So I think he should be a little bit more acclimated to it. One of the things I'm really curious about is they have one of their tight ends who no longer is a tight end is now a tackle, a team captain, but I think he's listed at like 260. So it's like, yeah, so it's like, Dean Abdullah last year when he was 260 something and he was playing in a reserve role. So I'm curious to see if he actually is 260. And then, San Diego State's defensive line, while I wouldn't call them small, especially like in the defense's design, they don't typically go up against people around their weight. And so I'll be curious to see just like what that would mean. What does a 260-pound left tackle look like? If he looks like a tight end playing tackle, or how all that stuff works. So it's a game that they have an opportunity. I think the preview, I think it's really important to see if San Diego State can be consistent, if they can tackle better, if they look more like the second half than they did the first half, and then see where it takes them from there. It is that late start, so there will be no need for canopies, thank God, and it's another opportunity to get better and get ready for UCLA.
All right, before we get out of here, production time. I'm gonna go 37-6.
37-6.
I think it's gonna be similar scoreline to last year, without them giving up a touchdown on the second play of the game. I think they'll start the game off with the lead and hold it and maybe give up a couple field goals, but 37-6.
Oh man, 37-6. Okay, so I think I saw that on your preview that the line is 28.
Per DraftKings, it was 28.5. I saw a few other places had it in the 30s, but I couldn't find the exact sports book, so I went with the DraftKings one because I actually saw that one.
Okay, so 28.5. So you 37. Okay, so you just you took the 28. You took state. You took state. All right. I'm gonna say that San Diego State would win, and let's go with 24-0. And what's going to happen is the State's going to have a drive of 12 minutes in the game, and there's a running clock, right? They don't do any of those kinds of things anymore where they're stopping it on first downs, and so they're going to have like a super long drive, like a 10-minute, 12-minute drive at the end. That's going to like make the score be a little bit closer than it was, and that's where they're going to only score 24 points. But it's going to be because they're going to have 3 possessions in the second half or something like that.
Definitely taking the under then of 51.
Taking the under, which again, to toot our own horn, we said that was a pretty good likelihood that the Ohio game was going to be 2 teams that possess the ball, and so possessions were going to be at a minimum. I didn't even take into consideration how much of that is amplified because of the new rules. The number of first downs that Ohio got, the clock just kept rolling, and they really were able to keep, SDSU's offense off the field.
All right, well, let's see if there's a 12-minute drive. When's the last time the Aztecs had a 12-minute drive? We'll have to look that one up.
I don't know, but Jeff Horton will be smiling when it happens. That's for sure. So I could be off by, I don't know. That's where I'm going. They're gonna pitch a shutout.
All right, there you have it. Our predictions. Check out my preview article that came out on Wednesday morning. We gave you some names to look out for, but as we talked about, there's so much uncertainty and so many new players. It's really hard to give a full-on scouting report on a team that nobody really has seen yet. we'll see what happens Saturday night, 7:30, Snapdragon Stadium, CBS Sports Network, if you can't be at the stadium. As always, thanks, guys, for listening. We appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing on all your favorite podcast platforms. And we will talk to you guys next time.
Yeah, no, 24 is too low. They're going to score more points than that. I don't know what it is, but it's not going to be 24. That's too low.
Do you want to redo that part?
No, I don't want to redo it. I just wanted to point out that I think I'm an idiot already. I'm already second guessing my 24.
You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.